And I sure as heck am not going to pay Caltrans any money to put a median anywhere. So if we can hold them to this in the future, we should do that, which will include the landscaping. It will still include 2 lanes of traffic and parking per the document here.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Are you sure?
I'm serious.
Okay.
That's why I brought it tonight to read it. Because Mark and I were talking about it, that the plan at one time was to reduce one-way traffic and vertical parking and have a median, which would just screw everything up.
Right.
So this is going forward to Caltrans next state-mandated multimodal use of state highways, especially through downtowns. So if they don't want to put it in downtown, don't put it in downtown at this point.
Okay, so you didn't have that information at the time.
I didn't have that information when we talked, and I beat up on them then. So now I'm retracting my comments.
Okay, so if that's the way the rest of council feels,
Leave our downtown alone right now.
then we need to get that information to Caltrans ASAP.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're going to say, I wish you'd make your mind up.
Well, they have it both ways in their plans, but if there's still a funding process to get access for landscaping other places on Florida Avenue without putting the landscaping in at this point, I'm all for it. But I mean, the city can't afford to put those in, I'm sorry, the city can't afford to put the landscape access, watering access in, and we can't afford to put the landscaping in, and we can't afford to maintain it at this point.
Right.
But if we can get it paid for to do that, I would suggest it's better to do it now than to wait till we can afford it. Because I mean, I got to be optimistic about Hemet. 10 years down the line, we're going to have the money to beautify Florida Avenue. And if we can do part of it now with somebody else's money, then we'd be foolish not to do it.
Okay, so you just contradicted your initial statement with regards to not putting it in now.
Downtown, leave it out.
Okay.
And the other thing is our whole plan, I mean, our plan in this book has changed dramatically because now we have the exact opposite of what we planned. Well, we were doing... But my point is it's... Not all exact. The median is going to be in the places that we did not want a median. The median will not be in the places that we plan to have it. But so my point is that sometimes plans change, and so we may have different ways to beautify downtown that will be different because the median is in the other places. And so we have to be open-minded to this stuff. But if we can, exactly. You could, we don't know. Yeah, from Caltrans too. Not the 11 million they've got now. I'm just saying that plans change, and this is a perfect example. They're putting in a median, in the places that we didn't ask, and they're taking out the section. But the thing is as far as for our council, we have continually told them no median, no median. No median anyway. Right, and so if we go back and say, you took this out, we want it in there, we're going to look like a bunch of loons, and we already do. So, I'm just saying, we need to be excited that they're taking part of it out.
Well, it's not a question of being excited or not excited. We were surprised to see that it was out when, for the longest time, it was in. We wondered why it was that it came out, under whose direction, because we didn't know about it.
When Mike and I met with them, that's what we had talked about.
Well, it would have been nice if that was shared.
We did share it. It's in the council meeting, March 2018.
That you
pull up on
requested
YouTube.
to pull the meeting
They never
out
said
from
yes.
downtown.
They never said yes. They never told us yes. But we said, figure out a section where we can have it out because this is going to kill our small businesses downtown. It's in a council meeting. We talked about it.
Okay,
But they never told us yes. So, like this plan that Caltrans was involved in, they have not committed to anything that we've ever talked about.
So is tonight the night that we're supposed to decide what kind of pattern or what kind of material that we want in the median that is going in?
So it's strictly a recommendation. There is no promise that Caltrans will do it that way, but we've got to be able to communicate to them the preference that the city has and what they would prefer.
This was a work study. Does does,
I prefer option 2. You should put up option 2, it's the herringbone, the dark
Yeah, that's the
red
one I like too.
herringbone, the one on the bottom there.
yeah, that's the one I prefer as well.
I like the last one, but that's for freeways. The one you're looking at right there, Russ, the whoopsie-doodie
Yeah.
one. That one.
You like that one?
That's for freeways. We're not a
Okay.
freeway.
Because that was the one that I absolutely did not like at all. Art is in the eye of the beholder, for sure.
You want to show the Dipsy Doodle one?
The last one?
It's one of the last ones. That one.
The one with
The woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Yeah. It,
Yeah, I like the herringbone myself.
make it a little bit nauseous.
And so we have the option of color as well.
So those are Mayor, those are the ones, the colors
Those are
and
the
the
colors.
designs that Caltrans has provided
So
to
if
the
you go
city.
herringbone, it's the
It's
dark
gonna,
red.
yeah, it's gonna be that.
Oh, so,
You don't have, you can't be blue or green or yellow.
no, I meant, was it gonna be gray or was it gonna be red?
Gonna be that.
Chris, you want to talk about this?
It's going to be that red color based on what Caltrans provided to the city.
Okay,
Kind of-
so if we choose the number 2, then it has to be red.
That's the color.
I'm good with that.
You're good with that? I'm good with that. Yeah.
I did like the flags.
I kind of like the stamped flagstone
So,
look.
and we have to remember too that if there's the crack, if there's space at all, even a millimeter between the herringbone, we're gonna get weeds through that. So,
Well, I think it's important to know, and Chris, I don't know if you would know this detail or not, but the option 2 that shows the herringbone, is that a stamped concrete look, or is it actually laid brick?
It's stamped.
It's stamped. So all of these,
All of
if they're all
Some
stamped,
are stamped.
okay,
then we don't have
no, we don't have to worry about it.
that weed issue.
Okay.
Well, I like the flagstone stamping myself. I think,
Which flagstone? 3, 4, 5, or 6?
let's see, are the option numbers above them?
Right there,
Yeah.
stop. No, go back, right there.
It looks like my patio.
Now I'm looking at option 3.
And so, what's option 3?
This one.
You go to option 3 now?
Go back right away. Yes, that down right there. That
Yeah,
top
you
one.
can't really see it there.
It's just a different. It's like a
So-
warmer color.
My concern is, when you're driving by,
Yep.
are you gonna see something stamped, or is it just gonna look like plain nothing?
Well, what does it look like when you drive in other towns?
No, but I'm saying, between the herringbone and stamped, and the flagstone stamped, you would see a little bit more definition in the herring. I don't mind either one, to tell you the truth, but you see a little bit more definition in the,
One's that out. The one out by Winco is what? It's a red herringbone. Where is it?
I have to go look. Haven't paid that close of attention to it.
so,
And just my thought, why I like it looks, even though it's stamped, it looks more natural and it's earth tone colors, and I think that is more aesthetically pleasing for the look that I think we would
so
probably
that's a
want.
red flagstone.
No, it's not red.
Brown.
Oh, brown.
I don't like brown.
It's probably a little orange, maybe peachish clay color.
It's probably more. Well, it's not
Yeah,
even proposed granite.
We're having to rely on how color accurate these photographs are in a digital representation.
Remember, and that's what I'll go. Which one do you guys want? We'll take a public voter's choice. Okay. I'll do
3?
Which
Okay, I
one?
want to see how many people like 3.
How many people like 3?
Skip.
Oh, there's a lay hand.
Participate here, guys. This is a democratic process. Okay, which one? Number 2 is the reddish colored herringbone.
So the bottom picture right there.
Okay, we've got one and me. Okay, then there's 2 different ones that we're looking at, actually 3. Which one do you want? Because there's 3 different ones of
Russ, what
Stuff.
one did you like? Because that was the one I liked.
Option 3,
the top
Can
one
you
right
make
there.
that one bigger?
Scott, can she make that one bigger, Scott?
Control plus, and that will do it.
yeah, option 5 is stamped flagstone, but that's gray.
So this one's a more earth tone, the other one is more of a pale color.
Right.
4, 3 is orangier than that one.
Yes.
Call for the vote on 4. I want to see what people in the
I don't
audience
like the herringbone because it has more definition to it, but
That's my reason on it.
it's, I mean, when you're, I don't know if you'd see a pattern driving by. Where you definitely see a pattern, you definitely see a pattern with the herringbone.
They need to know this right away.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
They wanted it by the end of,
Chris?
end of.
I'm probably against my better judgment of getting involved in any conversation about picking colors. But as you know, Deanna Iliano and I worked long and hard when we were talking about landscape and the colors in that area. And one of the things that we talked about, and I have zero preference, I'm just sharing, was in terms of some of the herringbone and the red, from a planner's point of view, and maybe Nelson, I don't know, could help me here, seemed like it was a little more dated from Deanna's perspective at the time. The other thing that we looked at was as we were moving to things like California-friendly landscape and conservation and having amenities, and I'm not just talking about a median, but just in general, that would kind of match that type of landscape that we are going to in our own right-of-ways. So an example is we did some cobblestone colors when we did the Sanderson median, when we replaced that horrible artificial turf. So just to give you some context, if you're really having some issues jumping around on this, and
Which one of them? What color?
I'm not picking.
No, just,
I'm just telling you.
what's on Sanderson?
Sanderson, I think that part of Sanderson has probably got the red with the curb on it, but we had some areas that would have been grass or would have been a more open stamped area that we have taken to the cobblestone. Those are city-owned streets, though. So
And
being that
cobblestone
these are your only options with Caltrans,
Yeah.
but just I don't know.
Color
I don't know
on
if the
the
spirit of
cobblestone?
Deanna hit me, but to let you know,
Color-wise.
we had looked at more earth tones in terms of more of kind of the gray or more of the beige.
So it would be option 4, closer to it.
And based on what I'm hearing from a business owner in the back, you, Mr.
You're a business
Searle,
owner.
was actually looking probably more at 4 or the 5. Again, just sharing, not
5
voting.
that's good. Yeah. The 5 is the gray color.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like gray. Gray looks like concrete.
I don't like it either. I'll go for the brown, but I don't like the gray.
Okay, we're back to that again.
Well, I do recall some conversations that Chris and Deanna had, and they were advocating for the earth tones. So maybe that's subliminally stuck in my head why I'm leaning towards that
Okay.
more earth tone.
I can be convinced that something else is better.
I can go along with that one myself.
I'm sensing
Stacy was the only one in the
consensus
audience
here.
that liked my hair.
Which one is it?
3.
I thought it's number 4.
To go with 3.
Where's 3? Go back to 3.
Okay.
Because that's 4, and I like 4.
Okay,
Four is the
we
lighter.
have a convert.
4 is the lighter color.
Yeah, but that's gonna fade. It'll fade.
Okay, go back up. Number 4. That's 3. That's a darker. 4. I can live with 4.
I can live with 4.
Okay, everybody out there live with 4. I want to see a show of hands. Police chief? Up or down?
Non-committal.
Not a big fan of concrete, it's a collector of a lot of gravel, spare tires, etc.
People?
Cities, lanes.
Okay, we got your opinion. Okay. 4. Should we?
Can I, Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, just formalize that, so I,
Interim city manager wants us to formalize it. He's learned. Okay, so, council is recommending,
We got to do both of these.
all the items, 1 through 4.
First, you want to make a motion for item number 1 to not replace the median and leave it as is that Caltrans has proposed. No median from. And we would like to pick option, what option did you guys go with?
4.
Option 4 for the median stamping color design. And did we get to 3?
3 is,
The landscaping.
The landscaping, we're going to wait and do the money from the next time.
If we can get a funding source to pay for the water and electric lines infrastructure to go in, I think we should do it,
I do too,
So
if we
the-
have a funding source.
if we have a funding source.
We will direct staff to look for a funding source, grant, something.
So you want that more long-term. I think the immediate request is, as it relates to this project, they had conveyed that if we would like to have it on this phase of the project, we would need to identify the funding source in the next few weeks so that they could
We could do
move
that.
forward.
We could do that.
So we'll just
Can I get-
continue the item number 3 and bring it back to the next meeting.
Or at least until we get
A funding source.
Yeah.
a funding. If we can get a funding source, then do it. We don't have to install the landscaping. We just have to.
So if we can identify a funding source, we will bring it back and at that point make that,
Yes.
okay. I will also mention that there is no maintenance that the city has
Correct.
in terms of any funding that could be allocated or staffing, so I just want everybody to
So I
be
think
clear
number
on
3, we
that.
just need to continue it until we get details,
Right.
period. So we are, item number 1, we're leaving it as is. So I'm making the motion to leave item number 1 as proposed by Caltrans. Item number 2, we're picking option 4 for the median, and item number 3, we will continue until we have further information.
Right.
Right.
And
That's my motion.
Number 4, yeah, we should formally request it if they're going to say
Night work.
no.
Formally request night
Yeah.
work.
Absolutely.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Please vote. That's approved 4-0. Thank you, council. I know. So now we have item 8C, resolution establishing the special event funding and in-kind contributions.
Okay, so as a result of the ad hoc committee gathering all the applications and going through them, there are a series of recommendations that are before you and included in the agenda packet. These
Will you
items.
let me talk first?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
Okay, so before he starts and gives this report, council, you need to understand, I'm sure you all went through this report. Now, we talked about many options. We talked about even depleting it altogether. So we worked hard to cut stuff down. If we need the money, then we need the money. So don't feel like this is something that's locked in. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, this is what we did with all the cuts. If we need to make more cuts, then as a council, we can do that. And so I'm not telling, you know what I'm saying? I'm not expecting you to pass this as we did it if you do not want special events funding at all. And it's not that we don't want it, but it goes back to what we can afford. And so our whole premise was taking the council direction and not being a major funding source for our local nonprofits, but yet providing a sort of stipend for them to do their events. So it's very difficult, and I'm very frustrated, especially after our last vote, that we gave money to a for-profit company, yet we are taking money away from our nonprofits. So this is an embarrassment altogether for me right now, but you guys do what you think you need to do on this. This is what we proposed.
Okay, do we have anybody wishing to speak on this item?
Yes, Mayor, we do have one request to speak from Stacy Barley. Bailey.
All right, I'll work on my handwriting.
You need to give that to them. She'll just. Oh. Thanks.
Let me know when you're ready.
We're ready.
Okay. Hi, I'm Cece Bailey, not Barley, and I am the current president of the Ramona board. And this is Jimmy Bouchard, who's also on the board with me. Lori Van Arsdale couldn't be here tonight, but she's told me what to say, so I will say it. We looked through your list, and needless to say, the Ramona Bowl was a little disappointed with the amount that we were granted. And so we wanted to come and just see if we could change your minds. I mean, after all, we are featured prominently on your logo. And we are one of the few things that brings people into the community from outside, different reasons, to come here as a tourist attraction. And I know that you're saying that it's going to be a stipend, but based upon even the $10,000 that we asked for, the $25,000, in the budget it takes us to put on the pageant every spring. What we're asking for was like a stipend. We have a long history here. We are California's official outdoor play and the longest running outdoor drama in America. You should know that when we go to the Institute of Outdoor Drama, we are respected. We are the queen of outdoor drama, except in our own backyard. So we're asking you, this is Lori's information she sent me with, which shows that we took in, the city took in $1 million in bed tax. And that money was originally, when they went to the hotels, they said, we're going to help drive the tourist industry, which will bring people in. So if they're saying that there's not money to do the special events, maybe we could use some of this bed tax to promote things that are going to bring things into the valley that will fill up those hotels. And we think that we are one of those things. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
You have a minute left. Do you want anything to say, Jane? Okay, all right.
I'm a fast talker, you know that.
Okay, council.
Go ahead, Chris, do you want to?
Oh, Chris, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I know that the ad hoc committee spent a lot of time reviewing this, considerable amount of questions that they had in terms of follow-up. One thing that I should point out that is something that is that we included this year is that we've tried our best in terms of the staff to capture all of the costs that some of these organizations may not have thought about in their in-kind support. And so we provided that information as well to the ad hoc committee so that they got a truer idea of what that cost actually was. One of the things that we did realize, obviously, is that a lot of these events happen on the weekend, and so we have to have staff come in on overtime. And so although the staff is here Monday through Thursday, oftentimes they're called in on overtime to come and support these events. And so with that being said, we have included the information related to the personnel, the labor costs, as well as some of the other permits that are included there that have been waived before, that some of these groups haven't included, but they have received that in the past. And so our attempt was to try and provide the information to the ad hoc committee so that they could have as much comprehensive information related to the allocation of labor, personnel, materials, equipment, so that they could have the full picture of what it actually costs the city of Hemet as it relates to these events. So, as I mentioned, I know that council members Percival and Meyer spent a considerable amount of time reviewing this, and we've provided the information in the staff report for the council and the public.
And I want to thank you, because I've sat on this ad hoc, and it is extremely difficult. I have just a little bit of history on how special events funding actually got set up 5, 6, 7 years ago, whenever it was. And it was decided by the council then that we needed to have a format for nonprofits to come to the city requesting in-kind services or monetary services for the special events that they put on that bring excitement to downtown, that is a benefit to the community. And at that point, because we were being hit willy-nilly, and at the end of the year, it was like, wow, look at the added costs, not only for staff time, but in actual hard dollars, and we didn't have a way to control or to look at it in any logical manner. So we created a two-step process of a lower range of funding up to $999, and then something that might be larger, all involving not-for-profit entities who create goodwill and better quality of life things in the city. It worked for a couple of years really, really well. And then I will say that things got stretched a little in taking advantage of extra services, and well, you did this before, and we've got to include this, and all of this good stuff. And I totally understand. When we were going through the budget this year, I know Bonnie mentioned it and I mentioned it, and we had a good discussion here about special events funding. Can we afford it? Should we continue it? How do we go on it? And unfortunately, you and Mike got put into that category. So I think it's still a good thing, but what I really have heartburn with this year is that the rules have been changed halfway through the process. All of these entities submitted their forms, and some of them weren't complete. I saw that, and if they're not complete, throw them out.
We didn't. There's only 2 complete, and we didn't.
Yeah, well, there we go. So we need to live up to our own standards. You're absolutely right. But at the same time, we've never thrown some of these costs into it before. We've had labor rate burdens for public works, for police, for fire, for the library, but we've never looked at a cost for message boards. Does it really cost anything to put a message board on the side of the street? Obviously, for West Valley High School, it's going to cost $2,798, $95 for in-kind. The band director requested $500 in kind to close the street and put a message board up. I mean, that's a far cry. So I think what's... I know, because I had a 2-hour discussion with Chris today. I don't have a problem with doing that. I have a problem with changing the rules midstream. Everybody walked into this saying, this is what we did last year, this is what we did the year before, and everything was fine, and now all of a sudden they've applied for the same things, and we're saying, wait a minute, now it's going to cost you to have the cones out there. Now it's going to cost you to have a message board put up. And I don't, as I said, I don't have a problem so long as everybody knows the rules going into it. In looking on here for the Ramona Bowl, in kind of $1,521 to put a banner across Florida Avenue, that's free for all nonprofits. We have, what is it?
all of the banners that are installed on the light poles, all the way down.
Well, we've never charged for that either.
But it still costs the city.
Well, and that's my point. If it costs the city, then we as a council need to redo the entire thinking of special event funding, decide whether or not the monies we use and the entities we support have a cost benefit to the city greater than what we're giving in-kind or monetary support. And that's my diatribe.
I get it, because we talked previously about following policy. So, and she has a really good point about changing things in midstream.
Well, I don't know that things were changed. I think that things were skipped over because nobody ever intended for the cost not to be accounted for.
I don't think that's in the original policy.
We wanted to just give away things for free.
Well,
But when somebody says in kind, it means that we still have to count the dollar amount.
I understand that.
So
But
I don't
it hasn't
think
been-
that it's-
It hasn't been done before. So when you have somebody relying on, I applied for $500 last year, and this is what I got in kind, and now all of a sudden you're telling me that same $500 is going to cost $2,300, that's a change in policy from the city perspective that the person who applied for that $500 doesn't know.
Well, it's just like with the chief. We're either going to stop it or we're going to keep doing it.
So one of the things that I should mention is you'll notice that in some of these items there's a permit cost. Well, essentially, oftentimes some of these groups weren't getting those permit costs, and so that was essentially waived. And so for them, they may not have known that they had that permit cost, but they were required to get it. And so that was, from their understanding, because they hadn't gotten it, they wouldn't have included that as a in-kind service. The reality of it is, though, is that some of those items do require those permits. And so for us to reevaluate and to actually look at what is actually required and ensure that essentially the public safety is protected when these events go on, those are the items that we've looked at and said those are the requirements that we would put forward on any other event that would happen. So that's what is included there.
So let me ask you this: what fund in the past paid for tourism? Because we used to have a tourism.
TOT.
Okay, so I think that tourism means anything that brings people of any significance into the community, whether it's the Tinsel Triathlon, whether it's Ramona Bowl, whatever the case may be. You know, when we have like the Evening of Art, that's really for the community itself, and we rarely get people from outside the community coming into that event. So I think that I'm not in opposition of determining a tourism entity, whereas X number of dollars from the TOT goes in, like it did once before, into the tourism budget. So I think it's really important that, and I agree with Linda, this isn't an easy task by any stretch of the imagination. And I wonder if we also can look at, I don't know how much we spend for the Christmas Parade and Veterans Day event, but if there's funding left over, we may have that to consider in this current budget to help offset something. And we won't know that until the end of the year anyway. But I know it's a hard task, and there's a lot of asks.
And here's another. I mean, I know you guys. I know you two in particular are worried about the Ramona Play. So the Ramona Play wants Hemet police volunteers. We did not do any police volunteers. If the volunteers want to volunteer for the Ramona Play, then they're going to go and volunteer directly to the Ramona Play.
Right.
And then, because then they'll have the best of both worlds. We won't have to pay for it, and they will have all the volunteers that they want. There's community members that volunteer for them all the time, right? So we eliminated the cost, yet they'll still have people that will want to volunteer, right? So part of it is that it's accounting for that. So we didn't include that in, yet there's still a way for them to structure it differently to still have volunteers. You see what I'm saying? So that's just one, for instance. If you go to page 312, it's the page that has the special events, personnel, fees, the detailed list, right? So the second table. So you look at the cost on equipment. Now this is if the people were going to rent the equipment, that's how much it would cost. Now, on the very last table, I don't think we included that amount in, right? We didn't include that amount in, but we included the equipment. Because it's not something that we're going to go spend the money on for the event. We have the equipment already. And we did not charge them that line item. So if you go back to 2, the equipment page, that is not included in the reward. It is on West Valley.
But it's
But
an in-kind.
Either way, we included it so that they can use the equipment, yet account for it. We're trying to do things to get away from when they are using the equipment to be able to give them the equipment on Thursday afternoon and pick it up on Monday so that they can store it and have their staff put it up. So that would eliminate costs, but yet it makes the dollar amount look smaller, but it's going to be the same equipment that they've been able to use in the past.
And you know, I
Like spring clean, right?
Yeah,
We can
I
store that in one of the empty stores.
understand
Put it
that
out.
completely.
Yeah.
Again, and I think it's really a good way of looking at our true costs. I mean, we've burdened the employee costs before, but we've never done the rest of this stuff. And if we're going to go drill down to the true costs to the city, we absolutely have to look at it this way. Again, my issue is we basically changed the rules midstream for some of these entities. So, and then I do have a question on the tree lighting downtown. Well, you know something? They're for-profit on private property. They're not a nonprofit.
Not in the city property.
And it's not part of the rules. We went through the rules. That's why.
But we've never given money to private businesses before.
Well, if you want to go there, Ramona Bowl is in the county.
It is, but they bring a lot of people into Hemet.
But you see what I'm saying? The rules have to be.
But I think that is in the original thing, that it could be in the sphere of influence if they bring people into tourism into Hemet. My comment is we need to do a lot of work on the policy before next year. We need to probably act on this tonight because there are nonprofits that have events coming up that are hanging on this. So I think we at least need to act on those that need to be acted on tonight, remove those that we think need to be removed, and then set up a future, maybe a work study. Just what we need is another work study, right? But we really need to do this and get everything in shape.
Well, and it's going to be a philosophy thing because, you know, I mean, when we pretty much tried to go down and limit the cash amount to $2,000 or less, just to stretch it out. And you know what our goal was? Our goal was half, to give 25 back, and we didn't even get close.
And I will share with you that when this originally was set up, I was against giving any type of monetary award to anybody. I said we can do in kind as the city, but I don't believe in giving actual cash to any nonprofit. So I made a lot of enemies at that point, and we still have discussions about that. But you know something?
But I mean, that's a good point, though, and we've talked about that too.
Yep, absolutely right. So I'm not going to talk anymore.
City Manager?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to add, with the staffing levels that we currently have, the other side that I've got to be mindful about is the impacts to our operation. So whether it's a building inspector, whether it's a public works employee, whenever an employee leaves the agency, that creates a larger amount of work that needs to be covered by the fewer amount of people. And so for me, I know the executive team, we've had quite a number of robust discussions regarding this, and I think the consensus from the management team is how do we get our hands wrapped around this, knowing that there's a value to the community, but also not hamper our operations with respect to whether it's a new business that wants to come in and establish in the city that needs an inspection, or whether it's another individual that needs to get some other permit from our other operation. So I can tell you that conversation, I mean, we have it every couple months or so. And so I absolutely agree that it needs to be buttoned down. But that's the other side of it, that being mindful of the operation, being mindful of the impacts to the staff. As I mentioned, oftentimes these events are on the weekends, so we're having to call in folks and pay them for the time that they wouldn't ordinarily be at the city. So it was our best attempt to try and provide as much information to the council just to show the true cost of these events. I just got a text from Chris. The equipment rates that we've included are the FEMA rates. So when we have events that require, let's say, the county to come up shop or set up shop at Brubaker Park, those are essentially the rates that we would be reimbursed from whatever agency it is. And so we didn't establish these costs as just costs that we felt good. These were costs that we would essentially recoup from any other agency given the circumstances. So we did our best. I think the staff did a good job in trying to capture as many costs, the true costs of it as we could, to give a better picture of what the actual cost is for these events, not only in labor and personnel, but also, the opportunity costs of what it means to our operation. So that's all, Mayor. Thank you.
So suppose that we find that some of these costs, whether in-kind costs in particular, didn't really end up costing as much as we thought it would, for one reason or another. Will we account for that in this action?
So we've had discussions in terms of the follow-up conversation after whatever happens here is with the executive team tomorrow, that any special events, we're going to require that all the staff code their time and their hours to specific labor code so that we can come back a year from now and say this was the actual true cost of providing that service to the community, whether it was fill in the blank on whatever event it was, so that we can have a better accounting and some really true numbers, even by month, in terms of the costs for those events, so that we can have an understanding of what that true cost is. These are all estimates, so if it takes less time to just deliver or set up something, then that's going to be reflected in the reports when personnel are actually coding their time to specific projects. So that's what we aim to do, given the action that gets taken tonight.
Well, I think that's a critical component going forward, because I agree with everything that I'm hearing. I don't have the years of in-depth experience. I served on this ad hoc committee once already, and it's a challenge. And a lot of times you're looking at an application, and you're not really sure if their cost of putting on the event is a swag, or if it's the result of their drilling down into the actual costs that they incur putting on the event. So there's a lot of abstract issues that really need definition, and I think what you're advocating and coding that is absolutely going to be necessary for us to be able to capture the true cost from the city. And I know too that a lot of these events go out and solicit donations and contributions from businesses and other entities that are probably in a much better ability to help provide funding, that than we are, at least at this time. So philosophically, I'd love to say that we can support these things to the amount that they requested of us, but in all practicality, we're not in a position to be able to do that, unfortunately. I even talked with our county supervisor representative to see what county funds might be available, and I was told that the county has funding available for special events. So I don't know if we're tapping into that.
We asked also if that would be an option for like Ramona to apply for.
Let me ask Stacy. When was the last time you got funding from the county for Ramona Bowl?
Not since I've been on the board, and I've been on it for 9 years. They haven't given, we don't get any tax dollars, we don't get.
I think probably the last time was when Venable was on it.
Yeah,
and it
that
was
the last time.
$400,000, something like that.
So times 9 years, they owe you a lot.
20 years ago. Yeah. So, yeah, hard task. So we appreciate the time you put into it. It's not easy. I hope that we can maybe come back at the first of the year and see if there's any leftover funding.
Well, I can see a couple changes if you want to approve any of this tonight. We've got tax time off here because we don't support private business.
Well, make your recommendation.
I'm going to vote against the entire thing anyway.
The what?
And this is not that they don't do a great job, because the Christmas tree on the corner of at McPherson's last Christmas was a big hit. It was really good, and I commend them for putting their own bucks into promoting something for downtown. And I think that's their choice. Hemet actually has the Christmas tree downtown that we need to take better care of and decorate and have it downtown. And then, well, then I have other ideas on that. But I would say that the cash award and in-kind for making Hemet great again tree lighting should be removed from the funding.
Any other comments on that?
Everybody else on here is a bona fide 501c3 or C4.
Well, if we're really going to talk about, when Patricia Permian was putting on the one downtown, that was one of the arguments, that she was a for-profit, and we funded that. So, again, changing policy midstream. So, and we've funded that for a couple of years. But again, are we not doing a tree lighting ceremony downtown this year?
Probably not.
But we fund somebody else to do it.
There you go. Trade-off.
Might be cheaper. Contracting it out.
I would like to see this money put towards actually putting a Christmas tree for the city of Hemet someplace where it'll do some good, like in the park or in front of the library where everybody could enjoy it.
Yeah, why didn't they put it in front of the library? And we won't go there.
It wasn't my tree. I don't even pay for it.
Does this have to be decided tonight?
It's up to you if you want to table it.
I think some of them need to be approved tonight because we have entities that are within 2 weeks of putting on an event, and they need to know whether
Okay,
or not they
which do you want to approve tonight? Well, you're saying we need to approve some of them tonight, so why don't you give me those numbers?
How are you going to pick and choose?
Well, let's put it this way. West Valley High School is doing their thing on October 13th. The Tinsel Try is the first week of December. I'm looking at you, Chief.
Okay, that's another private entity.
The school?
No,
It's a nonprofit.
Tinsel is a nonprofit now?
Tinsel
Okay.
is, I got I got all the documents from
Okay,
Connie today. 'Cause
okay.
I went that
Okay.
way too.
All right.
And she is it's
Okay.
it's a foundation. The Festival of Frights is Rotary. They are a nonprofit, and their event is October 19th. Kathy, when is the Art Association?
April,
It's not till April.
March or April, yeah.
What else is coming up? Habitat?
Ramona Bowl uses their money for their early marketing. That's what we've always used that money for the
I know.
mailer, which goes out now.
Well, can we just exclude and approve everything else and then come back and change the work on the policy so that it's done before the
Say
year?
that again, I'm sorry.
Just exclude instead of include? I would, well,
Shoot. Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
is in November, right? NAMI is November.
You know, I mean, I know they, okay,
Make a decision.
right. I don't think that $500 law enforcement appreciation dinner.
Yeah, that's not, it wasn't approved.
Huh?
That wasn't approved. And it was out of the city.
Oh, got it, okay. Out of the city? Okay, let's check these off. Come on, we gotta get going. Which ones are we gonna, do you wanna go ahead and identify those that are taking place before the end of the year? And those that are taking place after?
The pot of money won't change.
So what's the council's pleasure?
Well, I have a lot of sympathy to one point that was raised earlier tonight about changing midstream. Clearly, we've all identified a number of issues that need to be addressed going forward in policy revisions, but I have some heartburn about people in good faith made applications based on their history of what's gone before. So I have some concerns about essentially changing the criteria after they have already submitted their application. But counterbalancing that is the reality that we don't have the physical staff that we've had in the past to support some of these things in kind, and we're in a different economic situation than we've been in the past. So I don't know, is that offset each
Well,
time,
and
like
the
in
other thing
football,
is
offsetting penalties, the down goes over?
Threw away all the ones that were incomplete, we would have 2, maybe 3.
Well, there was one year where that was a hard, fast rule, that those that weren't complete weren't even considered, because they knew every single year what was required.
And so,
And it's all
trying
about-
to be fair, because we don't want to screw people, it was hard. Do we just throw them out?
Well, yeah, they should have been, because everybody on this list has applied before. They all should know the rules by now. They all read the same form, and the form hasn't changed. So, I just have heartburn, literally.
Well, maybe we should reappoint a special events and you guys try it.
Give it back to you and Mike.
Oh, it probably is not going to change if you give it back to me.
Okay, well. Motion.
Okay, I'm going to try a motion that we approve the recommendation of allocations as submitted by the ad hoc committee and go forward and closely examine and revisit the policy of allocations for the future.
Do I have a second? So, we don't have a second. So, why don't we,
Okay, I'll do an amendment against my better judgment.
okay,
What he has said with taking off the direct monetary award for Make Hemet Great Again tree lighting, but retain the in-kind. Now, and I have a question on that before we go further. So Chris, did Public Works put in 7 hours of last year in putting up their lighting on their tree? They did? Okay. And if we did that, then we'll go forward and change the policy going forward. Well, is that okay with you? I won't give them money. I will not give them cash. That's my amendment. Russ?
So the only amendment is taking out the cash, but leaving in the in-kind
Yes,
on just that one
yes.
event. I'll accept that amendment.
And also, can I add to update the resolution to reflect that?
Yes.
Okay.
so we have a first and we have a second, we have it amended.
It's just a functionally new motion.
Right.
The second.
Right.
Linda made the motion, I seconded it.
Okay,
The original motion died.
all right, all those in favor? I mean, not those in favor. Wrong meeting. Please vote. And that passes 4-0. That was long and hard. Before we go to council member, our council reports, I wish Charles would have been here. Because Charles,
Charles is not here.
he was here earlier and I tried to get Chris to keep him staying. He'd already scooted out. I was in a meeting today and I think it's important to convey when wonderful things are said about our staff. And I was in a meeting today when we were talking about additional recycled water retrofits and also turf replacement. And in this conversation, EMWD staff, who is the point person for those projects per se, stopped and said, I have to tell you, I wish everybody we worked with on all the projects that we had was like Charles. He is extremely responsive. He knows his job and just a joy to work with. So if you'll pass those comments on to Charles and how much entities appreciate his expertise and his willingness to work along, I'd appreciate that. And I'm sorry I wasn't here to do that. Thank you. Okay, council reports. Krupa.
Okay, well, adding on to that, I was at RCTC Budget and Implementation Committee meeting Monday morning, and Tara Byerly, who is Deputy Clerk of the Board for RCTC, accosted me as soon as I got in there and said, I've met your Deputy City Clerk, Clay James, at classes we were taking, and oh my gosh, and she just went on and on and on and on. He's bright, he's personable, he's this, he's going to be so good. I'm so glad I met him. He was just so good in the sessions and everything. You're so fortunate to have him. So I think so too. So Clay, thank you. Appreciate the fact you're personable and bright. And I, quite honestly, other than that, and on RCTC, we have formed a new standing committee called Traffic Relief Strategy. And this standing committee, to which I have been appointed, will look at traffic congestion issues for the entire county and come up with hopefully some type of mitigation for overcrowding on roads.